just going to say this up front. This is a very emotional experience. So I thank you all for being so supportive through what I'm about to disclose to you. Thank you very much, Life Force, for the opportunity to share my story with you. Before I begin, I'd like to ask everyone in the room who either has a child or knows someone who does, who is affected by autism spectrum disorder, to please raise your hand. Can everyone take a look around? Thank you. 1 in 88 kids today in the United States alone are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. That means that 1 in 3 households and over 2 million individuals are affected every year by autism. That's more than cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined. There is hope, and I am here as living proof that when you're handed something in life, you don't necessarily have to take it for final answer, and that when you have a determined will and you educate, validate, and empower yourself and others, anything is possible. So my son Miles is going to be 3, October 31st, so just a few days away. In order to tell this story, it's really important that I start from the beginning. So when he was born a jovial, content, affectionate baby. He exceeded all developmental milestones with great expectations from both us, our pediatrician, and everyone around us. My husband and I coach over 120 athletes every fall for cross country. By 11 months old, Miles was running with all of the athletes, high-fiving, having conversations with them. By 12 months of age, he had flown effortlessly across the country numerous times to visit family in Colorado. And by 13 months of age, he was enrolled full-time in a Montessori school program because I was incapable of keeping up with him at home. I'd get him out of the car seat, he'd run into the school saying, "Bye, Mommy," waving his hand behind me, never turning around. The teacher commented several times that she'd never seen a child so well-adapted and well-adjusted as Miles. So 15 months of age, we went for our routine well visit. We had our routine well vaccinations, and what ended up ensuing afterwards was anything but routine. Within 72 hours, Miles lost the capacity to walk, talk, and swallow. Sorry. I remember it like it was yesterday. He had his shots on a Friday at 1, a fever, and was irritable and uncomfortable by about 9 p.m. Gave him Tylenol, got him to sleep. And by 3 o'clock in the morning, he was up, writhing on the floor in the hallway uncontrollably. He wouldn't let my husband and I touch him or come near him. I called the doctor's office, and they told me that it was a routine reaction, and that I should just keep an eye on it and give him more Tylenol. By Saturday night, he refused to wear clothing, no diapers, and was hiding in the dark in his closet, screaming every time someone would come near him. By Sunday afternoon, he had stopped walking, was completely zombied out, ashen gray, dark circles under his eyes, was not talking at all, and started gagging on everything that he ate. So everything we tried to give him, he would attempt to chew and then spit it right back out. We were in the doctor's office 4 times by Tuesday afternoon, and the Connecticut Children's Hospital on Wednesday for a brain MRI because they thought that he had sustained either a seizure or a stroke. All of the imaging and testing results came back negative, and nothing of the blood work came back positive with any findings or anything. So for another 4 weeks, I continued to pursue the pediatrician and trying to find out some kind of medical explanation as to what happened. And the pediatrician finally told me, "Miles is fine, there's nothing wrong with him, let's just let it ride out." Right. By 18 months of age, Miles was full spectrum. So we had spinning, flapping, random eye movement, facial tics. He had lost all vocabulary, including mommy and daddy. And was falling over everything. He sustained a concussion, had 2 dislocated ribs because he simply was running into walls. He was hitting his head up against the door frame. Absolutely unmanageable. He used to get so upset that his lips would turn purple and he would pass out, which would give me a 5-second window to either change his diaper or get him in the car seat. So needless to say, we went nowhere. And I went into a permanent state of crisis management. My life began to fall apart in front of me. We eventually filed bankruptcy, filed for divorce, and I simply watched my life crumbling before my eyes. And I began to question whether I was going to be able to do this every day. I had the early intervention program come in and evaluate Miles. They started him with 6 in-home therapy visits a month, telling me that there was nothing that they could do to reverse the process, but that we were simply going to do management and teach us tools on how to deal with this for the rest of our lives. He was diagnosed with sensory processing disorder, self-regulatory issues, significant concerns for autism, with no hope of recovery, and very little hope that he would ever be able to mainstream or attend school. So I continued to go through this, and after 7 months of receiving routine in-home visits, pediatrician told me that there was nothing that I could do. I was kicked out of mommy and me classes in the library. I had parents telling me that I was an ineffective parent and that I simply needed to discipline my child more. And the last straw was that the pediatrician told me that I was an overly paranoid first-time mother who was inducing anxiety in my child. And I simply hit rock bottom. And everything that I had known fell apart. And I began to question whether I was going to be able to live this life for the rest of my life, or at all. And as I sat on the bathroom floor, a grown adult with the capacity to talk, I quickly realized that my son, who had lost the capability to speak, could not do it for himself. And that if I didn't stand up and do it for him, no one else was going to, and he would be lost forever. So I changed course of action, stopped taking everyone else's answers, or lack thereof, and began pursuing knowledge and information on my own. I went to websites, I went to books, I went to professionals, I began seeking everything, and I started doing everything on my own. I stopped his vaccination schedule, I changed his diet, I removed gluten, dairy, and soy, all chemicals, all dyes, all processing, all GMOs. The next thing I did was I purified our home environment, so all irritants, chemicals, sulfates, sulfites, anything irritant. I then found an alternative practitioner in Queens, New York, and started driving him 2.5 hours there, 2.5 hours back, 3 times a week, so that he could pursue alternative treatments way outside of the box. And started pursuing private practice service for him for occupational therapy, where he was in 8 hours of intensive therapy a week. His flapping, spinning, and facial tics stopped within 3 months, and everything else continued to pursue. So diaper changing, transitioning, we were limited to 3 foods that he would eat, and he seemed extremely irritable, uncomfortable, and very unhappy. In April of 2013, I had a chance meeting with Lauren Brenneman in regards to a cystic fibrosis walk. Body balance came up in our conversation, and at the time I had been discussing with my husband oxygen therapy and mineral deprivation in association with autism spectrum disorder. And when I started reading about body balance, it seemed to fit the bill, and I thought, hey, it can't hurt. So I started it, and it was a Wednesday. On Thursday evening, we were sitting on the couch, and Miles got up off the floor and started running straight lines up and down the hallway, saying, "Daddy, look." First time he'd run in a straight line, first time we heard the word daddy, in 24 hours. 48 hours later, he had an occupational therapy visit, and I picked him up. His occupational therapist came out to the waiting room and asked me if I had put him on medication since Wednesday, because his cause and effect, gross motor, and verbal capabilities were incomprehensible. Within 1 week, he started to gain gross motor skills, fine motor skills, verbal vocabulary capacity. We started hearing words that we didn't hear before. And 1 week after starting body balance, I was waiting in the occupational therapist's office, and Miles came running down the hallway to me and opened his arms and said, "Mommy!" And it was the first time I'd heard the word in over 15 months. So since then, we have pursued a biomedical approach for Miles. his naturopath and his pediatrician, his new pediatrician, have said that, have said that body balance has two things. Significantly changed his medical profile so that we are dealing with a much healthier profile today than what we would have possibly been doing if we hadn't introduced it. And that too, if we hadn't made the changes and stopped his vaccinations, that Miles would most likely not be here today. So I just wanted to tell everyone how grateful I am for the product, how grateful I am for friends and support. This journey has taught me everything about the strength and fortitude of the human heart, and how with an indelible spirit, an iron will, and the conviction and belief anything is possible.
You're an awesome mother.